All right, settle down, everybody. It is 6:34. I'm calling this meeting to order of the Champaign County Board Committee of the Whole. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Goss,
Here.
Hanover Friedman,
Here.
Ingram,
Here.
Locke,
Here.
Lockshin,
Here.
Michaels, Pugh,
Present.
Rodriguez,
Here.
Rogers,
Present.
Sexton, Storr, Straub,
Here.
Taylor,
Here.
Thorsland,
Here.
Vantage Theronot,
Here.
Wilson,
Here.
Carter,
Here.
Cowart,
Present.
Esri,
Here.
Farney,
Here.
Furtado,
Here.
Patterson.
Here. All right, next we have the approval of the agenda. Could I have a motion?
I will second.
Aaron and Jenny Lockshin. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next we have the approval of the minutes from August 15th, 2023, regular meeting. Motion by Straub and a second by Locke. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, next I have public participation. I've not received any slips. Does not look like we have any members of the public. Anything for communications?
Since Mr. Storr is not here tonight, the electronic recycling is October 14th. As always, please, there's not many slots, so if you can, coordinate with your neighbors to get in there. All right, thanks.
Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Chairman. I had the pleasure of attending the first Veterans Stand Down on Saturday. It was quite an experience and emotional also. It was from we started at 8, but from 8 to 2 at the National Guard Armory. The mayor of Urbana came and talked, and a number of veterans showed up, a number of homeless veterans that were truly in need, and it's really was very impactful for me to just spend one-on-one time with these veterans and talk to them and help with them. So we have blankets, food, tents, backpacks, shoes, socks, wool caps. But anyway, I just want to express my appreciation for the board and for the ARPA committee to allow the funding of the first event, and the next one will be next year. So anyway, thank you very much.
All right, anybody else for communications? All right, moving on. We have policy, personnel, and appointments. Mr. Wilson?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, this is my first time, so I'm definitely going to need your help. And then as far as for motions for first and second, I'm wearing my reading glasses, so I can't really see anybody. So if you say your name, that would be really helpful, and I can't see all the names to the right of me. All right, here we go. Personnel policy appointments, Roman numeral 7, A, County Executive, item number 1, monthly HR report for 3 months, June, July, and August. I would just like to probably highlight a couple items in the report on page 16 and 17. And what we have here, and thank you so much, Steve Summers, for putting this out. There are 44 vacancies and 3 new positions on this list. And just to kind of highlight a couple items, Sheriff's Office is down 23 personnel. 19, or actually 12, are correctional officers, 4 master control officers, and a couple sheriffs. Also, juvenile detention is down 6 people. So this is significant, and the public defender is down 2 with 1 new position. So overall, and then interesting to note that 10 new vacancies occurred in August. So highlights, 44 open and 3 new positions. Other than that, is there any comment or questions or discussion on this item? All right, seeing none, I can move on to the next item, number 2, appointments. So there are 8 appointments here, and all the ones in italic are incumbents, and the one that's not an incumbent is the first item. So 2, alpha, or 2A, resolution appointing Brian Buss to the St. Joseph Stanton Fire Protection District, term ending April 30th, 2024. Is there such a motion for this?
Mr. Farney will make that motion.
Mr. Farney, number 1. Second, Sexton, thank you. Is there a discussion on this?
I'll just say Mr. Buss should be more than well qualified. He was former chief of the I thought, just double checking with you, of the St. Joseph Stanton, and just member of the fire department before that. And his son is on the fire department now, so I mean, he should be more than well qualified to be a trustee. Thanks.
Thanks, Aaron. Any other discussion? All right, then, seeing there's no further discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, motion carries. Thank you. Item number B, resolution appointing Randall Zindars to the Penfield Water District, term ending May 31, 2028. Is there such a motion for this?
So moved, Michaels.
Michaels, thank you. Say,
Rogers.
oh, thanks, Rogers. All right. Okay, is there a discussion regarding this? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. All right, this motion carries. Thank you. All right, item Charlie, or C, resolution of,
Sorry, could I make a friendly suggestion? Can we make an omnibus of C through H?
so the motion is, may we make a omnibus for C through H for the remaining 6? So,
Yes.
is there a first for this, or is
I'll
there
second that.
second? All right, thank you. So the motion carries. We'll make omnibus for the rest of the drainage districts. So I'll just read each one, and then we'll have a discussion and a vote. Okay, C, resolution appointing Amon to the Drainage District Number 10, Town of Ogden, term ending 8/31/2026. D, resolution appointing Lucas Rogers to the Nelson Moore Fairfield Drainage District, term ending 8/31/2026. Resolution appointing John Leonard to the Sangamon and Drummer Drainage District, term ending 8/31/2026. Resolution appointing Travis Fruling to the St. Joseph Number 4 Drainage District, term ending 8/31/2026. Resolution appointing Linda Lee Drazet to the Union Drainage District Number 3 of South Homer and Sydney, term ending 8/31/26. And finally, H, resolution appointing Steve Harriet, thank you, to the Risk Drainage District, term ending 8/30/2026. Is there such a motion for these 6 items?
So moved.
So moved, Goss.
Second, Straub.
Second, Straub, thank you. All right, is there any discussion on these?
Yes.
Jim?
We should change the agenda to be 8/31/2026 on Steve Harriet, unless it's truly 8/3.
It's 31.
Okay.
8/31, so changing, how do we do this? 8/31/2026?
Yeah, that's fine.
Friendly amendment or something like that?
It's just a
Typo, okay, a Scribner's error, whatever you call it? All right, any other discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those not in favor say nay. All right, so the motion for the resolution appointing all these 6 individuals to their various drainage districts has passed. Next item, item 2I, currently vacant appointments. The full list of information is available on the website. And I actually previously discussed this, but there are a couple of highlights about the 44 individuals that are vacant and then the 3 news. Is there any discussion on this? All right, so I will just move on. Applications for appointments, for open appointments, information only. So that's provided on page 29 through 38. There's 3 drainage districts, 1 cemetery for 2 individuals. Is there any discussion on that? All right, well, I just want to thank the team that put that together. So thank you for that. That's my discussion. All right, so moving on to number 3 is the Job Content Evaluation Committee, or the JEC. 2 items are for approval, 2 are information only. So I'll go to the first one. A, approval of the creation of the grant coordinator position in the Administrative Services Department effective September 21 through 2023. Is there such a motion? Vanish Sneernock.
Lakshan seconds.
Lakshan second. Thank you very much. Is there a discussion regarding this approval? Thank you. Furtado.
I'd like to point out that the job description is for a full-time person. The thought was, if you recall, that we're just going to have this as a part-time position, that the board funds from our line in 2024, with the idea that maybe one day in the fantasy future, we can move it to a full-time position, but that while we wrote the job description for a full-time, that we would actually advertise it as a part-time. And I do appreciate this. If you recall that the board approved this position prior, and there was no job description ever written of it, and no consultation of the board about what should be in that. So I do appreciate that this has actually gone through some sort of actual formal process this time under the new executive.
Thank you, Ms. Furtado. Is there any other discussion? Michaels?
Yeah, I have a question here. In our packet, it said that it was grade G, and I look over here and kind of coupling in with what Dr. Furtado said, we're showing a grant coordinator new position for $87,000, when in fact, I think we were talking about a half-time person. So I believe that our yellow sheet doesn't quite coordinate with what we're looking at 3A here.
Vanish Sneernock?
Yeah, that includes both the benefits and the wages. The wages themselves are 66,000, and then your fringe benefits, which are your, pardon?
It says full-time on the sheet.
Yeah, but she said we're going to advertise it as part-time. And the grade there is to be
So
determined.
do you want to amend the sheet to say half-time rather than full-time?
It does.
Oh,
If you look at the very small italic words, it says, this is the estimate of a full-time employee. The fiscal year 2024 board proposal is to fund the position at halftime at a cap of $35,000. You just have to look at very teeny tiny writing.
oh, perfect. That's wonderful. Is there further discussion? Yes?
I'm just wondering why the education and experience or the knowledge, skills, and abilities doesn't have anything in terms of experience with grant writing.
Good question. Yeah. So who has an answer to that question? Michelle, do you have an answer to that?
Which one are we talking about? Are we talking about education and experience? Mine says major in a field that supports grant writing skills. Are you asking for something more specific?
Yeah, actual professional experience in grant writing.
Yeah, I guess realistically, thinking that we're going to do a halftime position, I'm not sure we're going to get a professional grade, fully accredited grant person. So I wanted some leeway in who could be qualified for this position to get started. And I would point out the one person we did have, I don't believe necessarily has like a grant writing degree, but was excellent. So
Yeah, I don't think the degree is the question. It's actual experience, successful experience writing grants.
I think that's, it says equivalent experience. I think equivalent is referring to the type of work they're being hired for. Is that?
yeah, I mean,
That's-
we wouldn't be hiring someone who didn't have grant writing experience, but I can see that it's maybe not clear enough.
Is there a motion to amend the description?
We can't do that.
Can't do it, it's gotta go through job content.
So is there a motion to consider this next time, or we just leave it as is?
I would like to have this tabled. In this education or experience, it says or equivalent, so it doesn't say that you need to have some sort of expertise. And I would think there would also be maybe some part-time people that would be possibly interested, maybe not, because they write for many different organizations at the same time, who knows? But I would like to see this tabled until we're a little clearer on what the guidelines and the policies are, the job description for this person would be.
Porcelain?
Rather than table, can we postpone with a date so that it
Sure.
doesn't just drift in the ether?
Sure.
Thank you.
Marnie?
Next month.
I guess I'm inclined to support it as written, and give the department head the leeway to hire the person that's going to be appropriate. We have a hard time hiring people as is. Let's get this thing moving on.
Ellie, is it auction?
I was going to support that same thing. I think the reading it as written here, if I was somebody looking for a job in grant writing, I would understand that that's what they're looking for, is somebody with either the background educationally or equivalent in workplace. I'm inclined to just leave it and move forward with the search.
Any further discussion? Taylor?
Thank you. I totally understand where Ellie's coming from, but I do think that John and Jenny both make a very good point, and I would support moving this along tonight to try and get this sorted out, because, my gosh, we do need a grant writer.
Thank you. Ms. Taylor, is there any other discussion? Furtado?
I had this job before I moved to the city. I got this job when I was in my early 20s. I had no grant writing experience, but I had these other experiences, and I raised the Parks Department $21 million in about 3 years. So I think that I don't necessarily, I think having grant writing experience is great. Being somebody who could write and could pay attention to detail and could read a budget and all of that kind of things is actually more important than actual grant writing experience. There's lots and lots of folks that have written lots of grants, and I wouldn't hire them.
Thank you, Ms. Furtado. Is there any other discussion? All right, may I have a motion for something? Is it to leave as is, or?
It's already there.
All right, all our previous motions are postponed. We're stuck with the original one.
No. The motion to postpone is on the floor.
Yeah.
So we need a second. for the
So no,
motion.
Diane made a motion.
I can withdraw it.
Okay.
I'll just withdraw it and we'll make it simple.
All
about
right,
that?
thank you. All right, so I'm going to go back and read the motion. All right, the motion is A, approval of the creation of the grant coordinator position in the Administrative Services Department effective September 21, 2023. Is there such a motion?
It is, you've already.
It's already
got a
motion,
and a
thank
second.
you. All right, so, any further discussion? I see no further discussion, so may I have a vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All in opposed say nay. All right, so one nay, so that, oh, is it kidding? All right. Are you allowed to do that?
Sorry.
All right. Okay, thank you so much. All right, so moving on, the motion carries with the unanimous A's. All right, item number B, approval of the creation of the resource coordinator position in the Animal Control Department effective September 21, 2023. Is there such a motion for this? Straub moving first and Patterson for number 2. Thank you. All right, is there any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. All right, this motion carries. Number B. So the next two items are information only on the account auditor's office and senior accountant auditor's office. Information is in the package. Is there any discussion on these items? All right, no discussion. Okay, moving on to B, Bravo, County Clerk Monthly Fees Report. Is the clerk here? No? All righty, any questions or statements related to the fees report? All right, seeing none, I'm going to move on to Charlie, or C, Other Business. This is the semi-annual closed session minutes review.
And a microphone. I'm going to make this easy. I'm going to move to follow the state's attorney's recommendation to open the minutes of the February 26th, and for all other closed session minutes to remain closed. For policy, for finance, I move to follow the state's attorney's recommendation to open the minutes of August 13, 2013. Oh, we're just doing, that's right, we're in policy, never mind. So there, very simple.
All right, so Thorson has a motion, Taylor second, and the motion is to accept the state's attorney's recommendation.
And I will remind you, if we want to discuss it, we have to go in closed session.
So there's no discussion. So all in favor, vote aye or say aye? Aye. Aye, all opposed, say nay. All right, thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Thorsland. That passes. Okay, last one, a couple items, two more, almost there. Chair's report. I really have nothing more to add, other than I do want to express my appreciation to the Job Content Evaluation Committee and to Michelle Jett for all the work they did for the items above and item number 3. And thank you for the work that you did to do this. And then the last item is discussion of items to be placed on the consent agenda. So what I have for placement, Mr. Chairman, on the consent agenda, I gotta say that correctly, is Roman numeral 7, Alpha A, 2A through 2H on the positions, and then 3A and 3B on the JEC committee approvals. All those for the consent agenda. So now I turn the meeting back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Next, we have finance.
Thanks, Mr. Patterson. Finance budget amendment transfers. A1, budget amendment BUA 2023-8453, Fund 2075, Regional Planning Commission, Department 100, Regional Planning Commission, increased appropriations $362,050, increased revenue $362,050. Reason to receive funding for 3 new programs: the Scattered Site Permanent Supportive Housing, Shelter Diversion, and Rapid Rehousing to address homelessness in Illinois. Do I have a motion? Mr. Ingram first, and I'm sorry, I saw Diane second. Michael second. Discussion. And I would like to point out we have somebody from RPC here in case anybody has any questions. Seeing none? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you for coming. Next up, budget amendment BUA 2023-9-19, Fund 1080, General Corporate Department 041, State's Attorney, increased appropriations $15,015, increased revenue $0. Reason, increase in appropriations required to pay for personnel expenses for departing employees in fiscal year 2023. Do I have a motion? Mr. Farney, second. Mr. Esri, second. Discussion. Mr. Esri.
Just like to thank Sheriff Harmon for his.
This isn't wrong one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm on the wrong one again. I'm sorry.
I will let Julia know that you thank Dustin for her work. Mr. Farney.
So this is personnel money that really, in my opinion, we should be looking at in November or December when we know what the actual shortcomings of that fund will be. So if there's a way for us, I'm not sure protocol yet, but if there's a way for us to delay this till then, whether it's by tabling, whatever the proper way of doing it is, I would fully support pushing it off until we know what the actual shortfall will be.
But I think first maybe Mr. Abanik has a point of information he would like to share from the state's attorney's office. Am I reading your eyebrows correctly?
Thank you. As to this note, the reason why the state's attorney's office wanted to bring this to the board's attention now is, first off, to comply with the salary administration ordinance, which does suggest that when a department suffers exigent needs during the middle of the year, the implication is there that it be brought promptly, and it didn't really suggest that we push it off till the end of the year. Also, for what it's worth, to, I guess, tack on a bit of additional information to your personnel report from a few moments earlier, one of our civil division ASAs is going to be moving to a different county department, and so one of the critical things we will have to do in the next few months is figure out how to fill that spot, who to fill that spot with, and how much we can within this next fiscal year budget pay that person to take on some very important work. And if we do not know plus or minus $15,000, that could significantly impact how much Julia believes she has discretion to either pay or not pay that person. So that would be the reason why we would bring that at this time, because otherwise we cannot assume that the board would grant that later on. We, of course, hope that that would be the case, but that was one of the main reasons she wanted this brought now.
Mr. Thorsland?
Thank you, Stephanie. JJ makes a good point. I understand that we typically, and I remember from many board meetings before, that we sweep all this stuff together sort of at the end of the year. I also understand that the state's attorney's budget, while hit with this retirement cost for these people, is not in the red. They do still have money. This did not deplete their personnel funds, so they know roughly what they have to work with right now. I think it would be a good idea to maybe now make a postponement of this particular decision to a time that we know, and I would allow the opinion of other members of the board to make that either October or November. So, and then put a date on that for the cow, which I don't remember the dates of those because I'm not a human calendar. So,
I don't know that we necessarily need a date. We would just need a meeting. Does anybody, we have a sort of speculative postponement. Is there any formal motion? Or do we
well,
want
if I
more?
don't need a date, I'll go for October. So we'll do it a month early, sort of a compromise position, and then you'll have a better idea what you're doing right now.
Ms. Lokshin?
I would counter that we would say November cow, because if we do this in November or December, it's still on the early end of it, and we would have a better idea of where we are. I don't see how, I'm trying to wrap my brain around how the 15,000 that isn't a normal thing would affect, I don't know, maybe I'm just trying to understand how it all works, but it seems like if it's normally a November, December thing, putting it for the November cow would make sense to me.
Mr. Farney?
Yeah, I'd also agree with November. Additionally, departments and offices have time after the first of the year to do these types of amendments to comply with the auditor's office requirements. So they've got plenty of time to do this.
And I happily agree with all of you.
So I think based on that, I'm going to say Mr. Thorsland made a motion.
I am making a motion to postpone this to the November cow.
Okay. Do I have a second of that, Mr. Farney? Okay, so now we are just voting on that amended motion. Do I have any discussion about the postponement? I will say that I do feel as we as a board need to be careful that we're treating all of the elected officials the same. And while I do understand that, and I have great appreciation and have had lengthy conversations about the particular difficulties of hiring in the state's attorney's office, that I've had similar conversations in other offices. And if we do this for one elected official, I mean, just to be blunt, I don't know how we say no to all of the other elected officials. And while it is nothing formal, our practice is, I do think that our new resolution that we put together is, I appreciate the being aware of this, and so it's not going to be January and $15,000 in retirements just comes out of us out of nowhere. But we usually square that circle once. I should also say, I believe from the state's attorney's office, the state's attorney's salary is issued by state statute, and there was an increase into that above what we budgeted for 2023. And so I anticipate that that might be another thing that we need to clean up at the end of the year. And just, I think our past practice has always been, we failed sometimes to try to get this done in one motion for each office at the end of the year. I think it's a good practice, and I don't really know that I want to open that sort of Pandora's box. Any other discussion? All right, so seeing none, all those in favor of postponing this until the November cow, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, so for Megan and the admin, please put this on the November cow. Okay. Next up, budget amendment. Thank you for your, that was useful. Budget amendment BUA 2023-938, Fund 1080, General Corporate, Department 040, Sheriff, increase appropriations $110,132.84, increase revenue $110,132.84. Reason to appropriate grant funds received from the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board. Do I have a motion? So move Taylor. Sorry, yeah, Locke, sorry, Jennifer, discussion. Aaron.
Yeah, sorry about that. I was thinking ahead to this, obviously. But no, would like to thank Sheriff Harmon for his well-written, I mean, not that others don't do it, but it is a well-written notice. And also thank you for having Chief Deputy Shannon come out to both caucuses in his place. He came in contact with someone who had COVID, I understand, and just wanted to kind of lay low, which is appreciated. But thanks for having her come out and her willingness to come to the caucuses if we had questions about this.
Any other discussion? Michelle.
I just want to reiterate my request that I only had an opportunity to express to the Democratic caucus, which is in terms of budget transparency. If you are moving this back into the sheriff's budget, do you want adjustments being made to the fiscal 24 budget for things that he will be able to purchase early, or are you just returning this money to him and letting the fiscal year 24 budget go forward as is? So I don't know that I need an answer right now. That might be a finance committee thing, but I would like it on the record that I would appreciate some very clear guidance as to how you want to do that.
So to be clear, the sheriff gave a list of potential things that he could ask for. Some of them are things we already put into the 2024 budget, and especially in conversation with the sheriff and Shannon, the software is something that I think that they might want to do now. So, but we've already funded it in 2024. So the question is, do we leave his funding levels as they are in 2024, or do we, and I agree we don't have to address this now, but we should address this in the budget process, right? I also just want to say, while I appreciate the list, I do appreciate the list, Aaron, as well. I would encourage the sheriff, this is one-time grant funding, to use it on one-time, like the dog in particular gave me a pause because that's an ongoing expense. So I do think we want to be careful that we don't use one-time funding to pay for something that will be recurring funding, right? That's a little bit more tricky. But I do appreciate the range of things that he gave us to consider. But so noted, and I think that's something we should discuss going forward. We could add it to the list of decisions we need to make about the budget. Any other discussion?
Just
Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Stephanie. Just a follow-up, just so I have it clear in my mind. The sheriff in his memo did indeed say he wanted to either prepay things in 23 for 24, correct? And so are we making an adjustment to his request, or we're just saying, okay, you did a wonderful job, which he did, then use this money at his discretion for 2023, period?
we're saying use this, go forth and use this money at your discretion for 2023 period. And then we as a body have to decide if that impacts his 2024 budget in a separate conversation. I will say his list is pretty comprehensive. He's not going to get all of this for $110,000, right? So I don't think he could get it all for triple that, right? So he gave us a list of examples, which I do appreciate, but I think we will just need to have a conversation with him and through the budget process about, does this impact his 2024 budget in any way, shape, or form? And I do also want to echo, the elected officials don't have to go out and get grants. We've already done this camera project. So him getting that money to come back into our budget is, extra work that he took on, and I appreciate it a great deal. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. Treasurer's monthly reports, any conversation about that? Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yes, I'm on. Okay, good. Yes, thank you. So here is my challenge, or my concern. We had talked to the treasurer a couple times, and other taxing bodies have reached out to the treasurer. And I think it was last month, I read a letter from the Mahomet Seymour School District where they were shorted about $1.5 million. And thankfully, they did receive some of the money that was retained, but they didn't receive all of the money that's retained. Now, I didn't bring all 508 pages, but I did bring this one page from Mahomet Seymour School District number 3. There's been 3 distributions, but there's still an outstanding amount of $70,210.65. And when I look through the various pages in the settlement sheets, basically on average, it's somewhere between 6 and 7% has been withheld from the various taxing bodies. And when I look at the ILCS code 200/20/130 all the way to 150, I don't see there's a provision in that code for the treasurer to hold back money from these taxing bodies. So I'm looking for understanding, or how can we make sure that all these people that are counting on this money actually receive it in a timely basis? That's my comment or question. So actually, I'm just kind of disappointed, to be honest with you. Thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'll make sure, I will tell the treasurer to watch this portion of the video and hopefully get back to you on that. Any other discussion or questions for the treasurer isn't here, but for that office that you'd like to get on the record? Okay, seeing none. Auditor's report is also available for July on the website. Next up, the county clerk, approval of county clerk notary fees. What you'll see in here is that the Secretary of State took over notary commissions from local county clerks, and so he wants to implement a $3 fee. I will just say, my understanding that is about what the Urbana Library charges, so like kind of keeping us in market with these fees is why he picked, because we could go up to $6, but trying to keep us in about what people do. So do I have a motion? Beth, do I have a second? Jenny, second. Discussion. So Vanishirna and Lakshan. Mr. Ingram.
I don't actually have a strong opposition to this, but I did appreciate very much when I was in office, our office offering this for no charge to our constituents. There's a lot of nickel and diming that can happen, and I realize that a lot of times that helps fund things in our office. So my opposition vote is only because I wish that we could keep at least a couple things without charge for them. So when I was recorder, I got my notary commission specifically so that I could be another person in the office to offer that to constituents. So that's just explaining my no vote.
Mr. Farney.
Yeah, I see exactly what Mr. Ingram is saying there. And the new laws on notary, they're making it much tougher. It's going to be fewer and fewer notaries available, and yet we require it for so many things. So, yeah, I think I'll probably be in opposition as well. because it's going to get tough to find notaries. Hard to believe, something as mundane as being a notary, but you're going to have to keep logbooks and things like that. People aren't going to do it just for their health anymore.
I guess if nobody else wants to speak in favor, I'll speak in favor. I know it's like only $3 a pop, but with the Secretary of State sort of taking that fee away from us, that doesn't seem like, this happens a lot, right, where the state swipes money, and I don't know, do we need to recover at $3 at a time? But I do think that there's at least exploring. Mr. Esri.
This would probably be for either Mike or John, but what was the fee by chance, or if you by chance know, Stephanie?
I do. It's been, the county's made $5 on each commission for a long time. And that's only by people who actually got their notary commission. There's maybe 130 every 3 years, I think, notary, or 6 years maybe. So it's kind of cycles through. In theory, you might have a lot more people coming in to get things notarized than you actually have people getting their commissions.
I mean, it's tough, right? Because we're taking the fee from the people that wanted to be notaries and passing it to people who wanted to notarize, right? So it is changing where we get the revenue from. Jen?
I will say that the places that I'm aware of in town that have notaries charge per page, and this is a flat fee. So for those of us with lots and lots of pages that need to be notarized coming up, $3 seems maybe like a deal. I totally get what everybody's saying about it being a nice thing to offer for free. I just wanted to add that.
Ms. Lockshin?
That's what I wanted to cover as well. It seems to be per page elsewhere, and, as we move further into the budget process and we're looking at all the ways that we're losing money and having to make up shortfalls, I feel like a nominal fee that is less than what is charged in most places and still is a deal is not something I can say no to.
Mr.
I will also say, since this is likely to pass for anybody that just happens to be watching, most banks in town will do this for free, and you do not have to be a customer at that bank. You can just go in and ask for a notary. I don't know if that will change with some of the other changes we've seen, but that is a service that, as a notary, I've found that a lot of people do not know about.
Mr. Wilson?
Just to add a nail to the coffin, I guess, depends on which part you're saying. I have notary services too from the Village of Mohammed, and there's no charge there. So I'm just kind of adding more fuel to the fire here, just a comment, nothing else.
All right. Seems like discussion has ended. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Can you hold up your hand if you're for it?
Go for it.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The ayes have it.
So that just goes to the board.
Next up, County Executive has several items. The first is approving award of a contract to something called the Terrazon Group for fiber optic loop cable replacement pursuant to RFP 2023-08. And we do have NC here to walk us through this. Do I have a motion? Beth first, Samantha second. Any questions for Mr. Gott?
Yeah, MC, can you walk us through this? Because I read it, but I wasn't sure where the loop was or what we were trying to loop. I assume.
Yeah.
Just help me through it.
Yes. Good evening, all. So, trying not to publicize exactly where our connections are running between our buildings, I will say that this is for the fiber connections running our private fiber throughout our East Campus here. So our current fiber was implemented decades ago. It is very old. We have a need for throughput and bandwidth that it currently cannot support. Additionally, we discovered that much of the runs between the buildings were not done correctly, and we have been running into issues because of that. So we are taking this opportunity to rectify some of those issues. But again, it's just something that even if it was ran correctly, we're at a point where we would need to replace it anyway. It's providing the networking infrastructure and the phone infrastructure between all of the buildings out here on the East Campus. Yes, sir.
Mr. Ingram?
Just to clarify, to make sure this will not be, because this is multiple buildings on this campus, this is not rendered moot by our move or anything. It will continue to be something that would be necessary even after this building is vacated.
Correct, yes.
Mr. Esri?
Just a small follow-up on Mike's question, I guess you'd say. I think you basically already answered it. But this is more a little bit of a hypothetical. If we, once we're out of this building, which we're going to do, but if we happen to sell it, I assume you've already taken that in consideration as far as, like, you could say, cutting the loop to this building.
So we did take the opportunity throughout this RFP to get pricing for a couple things. At this point, I am leaving that particular project and another one with Dana. So he is working on getting, hopefully getting some funding for that. But one alternate proposal that was a part of the RFP that we got bids and numbers for so we could properly budget was if we do close Brookins and we move rerouting the fiber that's coming into this building to a different building, what the cost would be for that. And the second alternate project was related to the Humane Society, being able to tie that into the loop. So we have the figures and the numbers for that. I met with Dana, hoping that we may be able to pull the funds together this year to kind of do some of that, but that was not an option. So we will be looking at doing those down the road. And again, those will be sitting with Dana when that time comes.
I have a question. We're going with the low bidder, and it's significantly lower than the other two bidders. I know it says in there that this is like their wheelhouses and this is what they do for a living, but that kind of difference always gives me pause when I see somebody that's that far out of whack with a low bidder. Could you talk a little bit about why you're comfortable that they can do the work given the size of the difference between the bids?
Taking a step back, I am joined here by Lucas with GHR. I'm sure many of you recognize the name GHR. They were the company who actually took care of doing a lot of the mapping in years past of our fiber. And so when I reached out to Dana and facilities to get some information to put the RFP out, we engaged with GHR. They made it a lovely offer for them to manage the RFP, so I will turn it over to Lucas, and he can share some more information.
Yeah. So after we opened bids, that was a concern of mine as well. So I just called up Jim with the Terzon Group to kind of validate his bid and see if it was responsive. I concluded that my recommendation should be to accept his bid. The other two bidders were Consolidated Communications, a local outfit, and D1 Networks, another local outfit. I think the nature of this work, mainly being exterior, directional boring of conduit and kind of more utility type fiber work, Terazon specializes in that type of utility scale work, whereas D1 Networks and Consolidated, although they do that, a bulk of their business also is more kind of interior security cameras, door access, phone systems. So really it kind of just comes down to them being a more suited contractor for this kind of large scale work. Again, I'm certainly not saying that Consolidated and D1 aren't capable of doing that. I just think this is more so in the wheelhouse of the Terazon Group. So they convinced me that that they're capable of doing this at the bid price they offered. So I just forwarded on kind of my confidence to you all.
Any other questions? Ms. Michael?
Real quick, as I'm looking at this, I see on page 62, GHR is saying alternative bids number 4A, 5, and 6 for 185 to be awarded. But then when I go to the bid sheet, I've got a lot of different ones, and their base bid is 97. So are we looking at 185,000, or are we looking at 97,000 for today? That was my confusion with this.
185. So
Okay.
it might be some confusion. Some of those alternate bids are ones that we are not moving forward with,
Okay.
again, due to the funding that Dana will be working on. And other ones, specifically 4, was a either or thing. So it was 4A or 4B. We made the decision as to which one we wanted to move forward with.
Okay.
But what we're looking for approval today for is the 185.
485, 5,
Any other discussion?
and 6.
It's a good question. Seeing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes. Thank you very much for being here today. Next up, resolution approving employee health insurance and related benefit plans for fiscal year 2024, page 73 and 74. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Michaels?
Michael, second Carter. Discussion? Mr. Summers?
John Malakowski from
Yeah.
Gallagher
Yeah.
is in the audience, so if people have questions, I can refer those to John.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Gallagher? Ms. Michaels looks like she does.
I don't have any questions, but one of the comments were that there were very few, if any, others that did bid on this. And quite honestly, even though we're looking at a 19%, we're very, very lucky to only have that much go up based on the trend of our usage. So I would think Mr. Malkowski could expand on that, but we're actually very fortunate, even though it looks kind of rough this year.
Thank you. John Malakowski with Arthur Gallagher. I have a paralyzed vocal cord, so you'll pardon my voice. The Blue Cross Blue Shield renewal proposal this year was extremely difficult. And over the past 5 years, the county has had claims in excess of premiums paid to the tune of about $12 million. And so the last 4 renewals have been single digits. Have we been able to successfully negotiate with Blue Cross? But that successful negotiation actually came to an end this year, although we were able to get an initial reduction of about 8%. The initial renewal was closer to 27+%, and we were able to negotiate it down to just a tad over 19. So, and as Ms. Michaels did indicate, 3 other companies declined to quote based on your losses as a group.
The good news just keeps on coming. I mean, we knew that this was something that we've been anticipating for several years. I think you can make the argument that this 20% increase could have been sort of spread out over multiple years. It's a big hit that's hitting us all at once because we're able to keep costs pretty steady for the last several years. Mr. Wilson?
Thank you, Stephanie. So the question then, that's kind of in the back of my mind, how are we anticipating increased costs in the outgoing years? Is there a way we could figure that out, or we'd look at a trend and say it's going to go up 10%, 15% year over year?
It's, I mean, I'm sorry, remind me of your name again? I'm so sorry. Malakowski, you might be able to answer this better than I could. I know that this, when Tammy used to do her budget forecasting, this was something that she built into those models.
Correct. And frankly, it's pretty simple. There's a formula, and your losses determine your rates. It's scientific formula. So if losses, and you guys can't see this, but the red line represents claims, the green line represents premiums. If you were, I guess, asked to bid on this account, and you knew that you were paying, $12 million more than what you were collecting over a 5-year period, what would you charge?
thank you for, I 100% agree with you. That was just my only thought, right? So year over year, depending on the health of our employees, the cost is going to go up, I would think, consistent with the trend, really. Okay.
2 points that I wanted to raise. One, just so, especially for new board members, in our collective bargaining agreement with ASME, we do have a cap. We've never hit that cap in the history of time until now. And so I had Tammy, we don't have a cap on Head Start. This isn't including Head Start, and we have a cap on highway for the first time. So what I mean by a cap is the employee pays the increase the employee pays the percentage of the premium, whether it be 14, 16% based on their particular collective bargain agreement up to a certain dollar amount. And then after that, we're on the hook. We've never been on the hook for that in the past. Depending on how you calculate out the highway, it's between $13,260 and $17,472 in that range that we paid if there hadn't been a cap. Obviously, the vast majority of the addition that we're paying is not because of that. It's just because we take the, if the premium goes up 20%, we only pass 14% of that or 16%, depending on the collective bargaining agreement, to our employees. The rest of it in its entirety, we're paying for. I will say too, as far as I know, the FOP has not, at least recently, asked to bargain that cap. I think we can anticipate in the future that they might, but that is not part of their current collective bargaining agreement. So just so you're aware of that. The other thing that we talked about at length in Finance Agenda is that in the future, and this might be more of a charge for the Labor Committee in the future, is right now we don't have, our plans are not particularly attractive to people with dependents. And one of the perhaps problems with our salary, our participant pool, is we don't have very many young people. And so if we think about in the future how we want to allocate our resources to helping our employment plans, employee benefit plans, thinking about how we can make our healthcare more attractive to families might be something we'd want to consider, because that might be one of the, like, our pool tends to be older, higher pay, you know what I'm saying? We don't necessarily have a pool that is going to work in our favor in the long term. And in part, it's because of how we structured our benefits. A lot of people that have families simply do not move them onto our plan if they have any other option, because it's cost prohibitive to do so. I don't know if that's a conversation that you had in the meetings, but that's definitely a conversation we've had in finance.
Believe me, that is a meeting or a conversation we have virtually every meeting.
Okay. So those are just things for us, to Mr. Wilson's point, for us to keep in mind as we think about this long-term and how we're going to address this long-term. Thank you. All right. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Oppose? Next, we have the Veterans Assistance Commission on here. I just think that we as a body are looking to a future we're going to make a sizable dollar amount investment in our veterans, as well we should. And so we have two sort of things going on simultaneously. One, we have a new Veteran Assistance Commission head, and who's trying to navigate what this new legislation means. We also have given $165,000 in ARPA money, right, for a program that I think all of us would like to see continue. And so I think we as a body helping to try to figure out how to make those things work together. So I came up with 4 questions. You have a memo on your desk. I'm not going to waste your time reading them all. But what I was hoping is that we, as a finance committee, could channel questions we have to our liaison on the Veterans Affairs Committee, and then ask him to report back. So these are some questions that I had that I think could help make sure that the investments we're making, particularly in the Stop the Violence program, make sure that we're reaching the veterans that we're already serving, and put us in a position to continue that program after the ARPA money leaves. So these are just questions that were on my mind, but I wanted to open it up. You don't have to have questions right now, but if you did have questions that you could funnel to either myself or Mr. Wilson, and I'd like to have us continue to have this conversation, maybe like have it on the October meet, and I'm not saying every month, but I want us to keep touching base on Veterans Affairs, because I do think the state has passed this legislation, and we as a body have to figure out, well, what are we going to do about it? And I don't think that's like a conversation we can have in 5 minutes. So that's all I had to say about that. I don't know if this is useful or not. So some of these questions are easier, and I did speak, Mr. Wilson, to Ms. Michaels before the meeting, since she had this, and said, hey, you might have some ideas on how to help Jeff answer some of these questions. I don't want to be like, Jeff, go, solve all of life's problems and answer all these questions. But I do think trying to come up with some of these answers might make sure that that initial ARPA investment we did continues. We've given a lot of initial ARPA investment to a lot of different programs. None of the rest of them do we have a specific state statute that says go forth and spend 7 figures on that in the future, right? This is unique. And so we have had that responsibility put on us, and I just think we need to rise up to that challenge. So if you think of something, these are just the musings of me when I can't sleep. So if anybody else has any questions that you'd like to have brought back to the Finance Committee, please. I don't want this to be like the end of the conversation. And this memo in particular focuses on Stop the Violence, but we might have additional questions on the direct assistance side as well that we could add to the conversation. Samantha.
Thank you, Dr. Furtado. I think these are very good, important questions that you have listed here. I just think that the VAC and the Stop the Violence initiative, they need to work together. And so I think that this will promote their collaboration, hopefully. I also believe that the Stop the Violence initiative will reach a certain population in our community that the VAC maybe cannot reach. So I'll be thinking of some questions, so I'll be sending them to you as well. Or should I send them to Mr. Wilson?
I think send them to Mr. Wilson, but if you could let us know, and so that I just want this to be a conversation that we're having, right? I feel like it's a lot to put on either the admin office or VAC. Just go figure it out all on your own. And as usual, Samantha, you put things better than I do. Any other discussion? Okay. Oh, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Stephanie. I read your 4 questions, which I think they're wonderful questions. And I think they're right to the point, and they're items that I think truly need to be understood and resolved and communicated, all those things. And I'm thankful I'm in the state on October 10th. I travel October 20th, so I'll be here October 10th, so for the Cal meeting. But these are wonderful questions, and if there's some other questions that any board member has, it's helpful if you email me, because if you call me, I will write it down, and I have terrible writing skills. Well, I have good writing skills, but I just can't read my writing. So, but anyway, yes, thank you so much. So if there's other questions or other thoughts or lingering thoughts, and maybe as time goes on, you think about, well, what about this, what about that? I'll do the best I can to answer these questions and work together, hopefully with some individuals, and we'll just move the ball forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And I also, like I said, let's continue the conversation in October. I know we might not have answers to all of these in October, right? Some of them might be still something we're trying to work out, but thank you for that. And you do have it as an email, so that I like to get my thoughts in writing. Okay, next up, we said that we were going to go in a circle, and everybody's going to say their philosophy of budget, because between now and 2 weeks from now, we have to make determinations and give the admin our direction on, a couple $1 million worth of budget requests. And I feel like we need to have some way of coming to that decision. So I want everybody to have a chance to go around. And again, this is not really where you're going to say, I want to fund this specific thing, although if you go off script and do it, there's nothing I could do to stop you. This is more where you're going to say, this is how I'm thinking about the budget, right? So what I thought today, since last time we started over there, I'm going to start in the middle this time with Mr. Thorslin, and we'll go around, and that means we'll end with Chair Patterson.
Thank you, Stephanie. Much appreciated. Okay, well, I'll try to be short and concise because there's 21 or 2 of us here tonight. I always lean towards people. We've heard over and over again a few of the departments that really have staffing issues, which is all of them. But some that I think are important are the public defender and the sheriff, which sounds like opposing forces, but we know the public defender's office is perpetually shorthanded. And we have a lot of changes coming up in the way cases are handled, I think in a couple of days, right? And they'll have a lot more work to do with the people they have. So I'd like to think about getting some more budget into some of their requests, both for people and retention. The same with the sheriff. Deputies cost a lot of money, I know, but if we have money, we're always short deputies and we're short of sergeants' positions right now. Make the case and try to get some money directed that way. And again, for retention, we train these deputies and they run off to other departments. So if there's any way we can sort of divvy up between getting a few new ones and incrementing everybody else in a way that we keep them for longer than we do past their training, that would be helpful. As far as things, this household waste facility is just a thing that I've been in Champaign County for a long time, and we used to have a thing you could take your stuff to. And it's sort of a service of the future. If we can get things out of people's properties and houses and things, they don't go into the water table, they don't go down the sewer, they don't go down the drain. And the amount of money, considering what it can do, 10 years down the road, I think is not a huge ask. So I'd like to see some stuff directed to that. And the jury pay stuff. It's small potatoes, but we ask people to come, interrupt their week, miss lunch with their friends, listen to boring videos, and hopefully adjudicate cases of their peers. And we pay them 1968 rates to do it. And I think that we really need, both for grand and petit jury, do that. So all of my stuff sort of leans toward the personnel side, and that's my basic philosophy.
Leah.
Thank you. I'm going to take this pretty much shorter than Eric here. And my general budgetary philosophy is similar to a lot of the angst that I had when I was on the facilities committee. We talked a lot there about deferred maintenance. I hate deferred maintenance. We need to take care of the stuff that we have right now so we can keep it good. And I'm not just talking about buildings. I'm talking about, in general, all of the stuff we spend money on, people, et cetera, especially the people. We need, budgetarily, my philosophy is to take care of what we have and then add to it if we can within our means. Thank you.
Beth.
I would agree with Leah with the addition of, I am going to be really focused on things that bring in money. I think the grant coordinator is a potential gold mine. I don't like that we're looking at a part-time thing. I am actually willing to forego what salary I get as a board member to put it towards making that a full-time position for the next however long I'm in office. That's how important I think that is. Anybody who wants to join me, feel free. I think it would only take 2 or 3 of us to fund that. I am looking at the potential income loss for a pathologist. That guy's going to pay for himself or herself right quick. There's places, that the $3 fee. It's like you can argue about that till the cows come home. We need money. The ARPA days are over. Happy days are not here again. And I'm going to be looking very, very closely at whether or not what you're doing is going to save us more than it costs. And that includes employee retention, because it costs a heck of a lot of money to onboard new employees and to replace people and train them up. only to lose them again because they just get enough experience to walk out the door again. And I would like to not be a revolving door of, corporate trainees. That's where my focus is going to be on.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I am in the camp of, for 2024, I would be very cautious of any new spending. I think we need to focus on retaining the current employees that we have, and that we need to do that in a measured and well thought out strategy that I think will take most of 2024 for us to do. So I just would say my budgetary philosophy is caution.
I'd like to echo much of what has already been said. I would say my focus overall is also on personnel, particularly retention. On the labor committee, that is something that came up consistently as we worked through our contracts. So that is something that is on my mind, and that will certainly be an issue in the next 5 years as well. So I would say that I am also cautious. I wouldn't quite, I wouldn't compare it to the Great Depression, but when you said happy days are here to stay, it's like, okay. But yes, we received funds from the federal government, and I think that's a great thing. I think we invested it wisely, and I think we'll continue to do that.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and just say, I think the best thing and the wisest thing that we can do is spend what little money we have on our employees. Our employees are how our county runs, and without them, we, won't have working offices. We won't have elections. We won't have all of the things that we need. We've all worked in places where maybe the pay wasn't the best, but we felt appreciated. We felt like the people in charge were doing what they could to make our working environments and our salaries the best that they could. And I want to be that for the folks that are county employees. I think that will do a lot for retention and recruitment. And also productivity, right? When we like where we work, when we feel appreciated, we come to work excited, we come to work ready, to do our job to the best of our ability. And I hope that we can provide that for the folks who work here.
I'm going to echo what most people have been saying so far. Caution is my main goal this time. We don't know that we're going to have 5% growth again anytime soon. Setting up new lines, hiring 3 new employees in any one department, and the recurring cost and the training, and then losing them in 2 years to a rival department. It doesn't seem like the best use of the limited funds we have. With the exception of the public defender's office, I know I say it, I'm a broken record. I worked in a peer county where we had a victim witness coordinator, where there weren't 3 secretaries for 17 attorneys. I do not understand how they've been making do so far. So I'm caution, but also we have a duty constitutionally to fund this office, and we should at least be funding it at subsistence level. And so I will support at least one of the positions that Ms. Pollack has told us that she needs. But otherwise, 5% is not going to happen in growth year after year, and we do need to learn to live within our means.
This has been very hard for me. It's my first time on the board and my first budget. I wanted to give everyone everything. But I do think that retention and personnel is very important. And I do agree that if we can make people feel appreciated, and if we could spend what money we do have to try to keep people, especially with all the vacancies that we have across the board in multiple offices. For that reason, I'm hesitant to add new positions in any office, unfortunately. So I guess I would just say personnel and retention.
Retention and eventually compression.
Well, I haven't gave any thought to this here because you all are bringing out such good ideas, you know, and I'm willing to support whatever one we decide we want to fund. And that's about it, because all of my good ideas.
Everyone saying such wonderful thoughts, and I too am new to this process. And I think of a couple things, and a couple things are swirling in my mind, but not enough so I can still sleep at night. So, because if I don't sleep, then I'll be really wiped out. But anyway, I like to think of three things. One is what's the why, two, the what, and then three, the how. And the why defines what we're going to do and how we're going to accomplish it. So, and then I also think about, I want to be open-minded, frankly. So I'm choosing to be open-minded and not have a particular preference. Because I think I will function better if I make a better informed decision. And I know there's probably some things that are required and then some things that are desired. And then some things that may be absolutely necessary, but I would like to understand, and probably that's the homework that I have to do, is what's the long-term impacts when we say no? Or what is the consequences for saying no, and then also alternatively, what's the consequence if we say yes? And I don't think, I was obviously impressed by every department's discussion. And like you, Rogers, I was saying, oh yeah, let's do that. Oh yeah, let's do that. I mean, I could see merit in just about all of them. I think the hard part is, and that's why I'm keeping an open mind, and I'm appreciative of the team effort to get there. Because I think, Stephanie, it takes all of us to figure out what the right thing to do is. But then I just want to keep in mind, okay, what's the consequence for that? There is a consequence, whether we say yes or no.
Yeah, as somebody who's really a numbers guy and have been and deal with budgets my entire career, you know, I look at 1.5, almost 1.53 million in new requests for employees, another 4.25 million of expenses that a lot of them we really can't do much about. You know, we can't change that our health insurance cost is going up $1.6 million. You know, it's really difficult. I would say, just as a point of history, when I got on this board in 2017, our gross revenue was right at $36 million. I didn't add up what it is. I didn't find the page to give us what our total is, but last year it was roughly 43. So we are a county that is very, very blessed that our EAV goes up, and we haven't changed our overall tax rate, and yet we've increased the revenue. The problem is the last couple of years, because of COVID money, because of just money that was available through the federal government, we've gotten a little sloppy, in my opinion, because we didn't have to make hard decisions. I assure you, let's see who was on the board at that point, Aaron, Diane, myself, Stephanie, Eric, Kyle, Lorraine, who have I missed? I think that's, in 2017, 2018, 2019, these decisions were intensely difficult, and the people that have been on here a long time, they remember back in 2011 when we made a bunch of cuts. And so the last thing I would say, and you know, you guys will make the final budget decision, I'll have a discussion here at the end of the month, but I would be super cautious about funding new positions, because while I see merit in each and every single one of them, I'd hate to go back in a year if I was a board member and say, listen, our EAV went up 1%, and now I'm mandated by contracts to give these kinds of raises. And oh, by the way, our health insurance just went up another $1.6 million that we can't do anything about. Those costs are uncontrollable. And so these new positions, again, I just think it's hard to fund any of them, in the fact that I think we're, what, 725,000-ish short? We don't know how we're going to fare in the pathologist issue. Well, I mean, I just think there's some unknowns that you're not going to be able to solve by the time we have to ratify a budget. So caution is better. Our fund balance is great, but I don't want to go back. If I were you, it is not enjoyable wondering how you're going to make the next 2 months without borrowing from another fund. And we've been there. And I just caution you that going back is tough. So I've said enough. You guys have heard it before, but that's my budget position, is caution.
This must be number cruncher row here, but I kind of iterate what Mr. Goss said, having seen these numbers for a long time, and it is tough because you want to do the best for everybody that you can. But I feel like maybe keeping what we have, even though we're short in areas, that would be something that would be a positive. My main concern is making sure that we look at our statutory requirements. Folks, those change on an everyday basis with what the state tells us that we can and cannot do. That has cost us a lot of money, and it will potentially cost us more. So we need to be very careful that we at least take care of our statutory requirements. I agree with a lot of the other things that have been said, but that was one thing that hasn't been mentioned, so I'll throw that in the mix.
Well, this also is my first time being here on this. And for me, the corrections and the probation and the juvenile detention center, they're also short-handed, and especially JDC. I was there for 22 years. You cannot do that safely, that short-handed. You cannot. Been there through some of that, and it's not pleasant, and I know why people don't stay. They require a college degree to do that. All I needed was my wrestling coach. They just don't want to stay for that kind of stuff, working nights and weekends and holidays. So we need to make sure that that's taken care of so that they're adequately staffed. Thank you.
Back in about 2010, we went through layoffs here. I was an AFSCME employee in the county clerk's office. I was second from the bottom, seniority-wise. I was going to be one of the ones cut. We don't ever want to do that. I agree with what we've been saying about needing to retain the good people we have. I think if we can focus on making sure we get the best bang for our buck in what we're able to offer and improve what we're offering, maybe it's benefits-wise. Salary is important, but it's not the only thing. And if we can do more for the employees through benefits, maybe that's something we look at. So I agree, focusing on the personnel is probably what we need to do.
Can't say a whole lot that hasn't already been said. Retention, definitely. On these two sheets, there's not a request that doesn't have merit. There's not any that I see that is just truly if we were flush with money that I would do this. Though all of these have merit. Now, obviously, each of us can have different opinions on how much merit and rank them differently, but they all have merit. But retention for sure. Yes, I would like to see four more deputy sheriffs, but we are having a hard time keeping what we have. We aren't fully staffed in the current position. So again, to add a position right now when we aren't fully staffed, that is a little hard to do. And yeah, I got started on this board in 2011. I think it was March. And so I wasn't necessarily right in making all the cuts, but I was there when it, saw some of the occurrences and happenings of it, and it's not fun. And it's been said many times, we do need to play it close to the vest, I guess, like if you were playing cards. I mean, you can't just go out there and spend everything we want. If we were truly flush with money, okay, yes, but I guess then I would question, if we were truly flush with money, are we taxing too much? I think you need to have to make some choices. I mean, if we were able to just fund everything, then I would say that, yeah, government's probably too big and we're taxing too much. You can't just fund everything for every department, because that wouldn't be right either, I don't think, to the taxpayers. But they aren't fun necessarily decisions to make. They're hard decisions to make, but we have to do it. And yeah, retention and caution, because we have seen some pretty good times here. But as Mr. Goss mentioned, we were down to basically very little in the fund balance, and we had to do some creative budgeting to make sure that we had money to pay employees not that long ago.
So I agree with, I think almost everyone has said that people are the most important. I do want to add to that I think I don't want to take a one-size-fits-all approach. And so if we're comparing retention and raises versus hiring new employees, I realize those have different budget implications, but I think we have to look at each department individually. They serve very different purposes, and you may have a situation where if you do not hire, then you're going to lose everybody, right? I'm saying this in a philosophy, hypothetical sense. So I wouldn't make a blanket decision to only give raises or to, only hire new employees. And then I would just reiterate a few things that I've heard around the room. I agree. I think it was Beth who mentioned, let's also keep an eye out for, what might generate income. So grants. And then I think it was Jeff who also said, let's take the long view here. And, yes, we may be making a decision for one fiscal year, but these decisions will have a ripple effect down the line. And so it may be worth going into a little bit of debt or spending a little bit more if it will save us 2, 3, 5, 10 years down the road.
Well, gosh, that was like what I wanted to say. No, I guess I'll just reiterate the points then too, because those were the big things for me were retention and making sure that we're retaining, the employees we already have, but also to the point that in some departments that may be that we need to hire, because there's no other way around that. And then alternate revenue streams. Trying to generate income for the county in non-traditional ways or traditional ways maybe that we just haven't tried yet. For me, this is not my first time through the budget process, but it's my first time where we didn't have $40 million to just throw around. Not that we were throwing around. I think we've made some very smart decisions. I think we've invested it very wisely. This is money that's going to serve us well for decades to come. But yes, this is new to me, so I just think people are first. Boils down to that.
I'll say I'm super glad to hear basically everybody talk about the people that we employ. I don't believe that has always been the direction of this board, and I, in particular, when I was first running back in 17, when meeting county employees, that was one of the things that they talked about the most, was like not feeling, especially long-term employees, like the board really considered them very much. And I remember a pretty concerted effort to try to stop cost increases to our non-bargaining unit employees' healthcare. That was a static increase that was going to really ding the people that made $30K. while at the same time we were being asked to raise our elected officials' salaries. So I think we've moved from that in a very positive way, and it's very nice to hear everybody talk about that. I would like to make sure that we can deliver on that. I think it's important, and I do believe that the continued insistence, of course, that we not just take care of our current employees, but that we continue to hire people, because we will be confronting the same problem that the trades have, in that all of our employees will be aging out and we won't have new folks. This is fun, this little hat. But yes, I've seen a pretty concerted effort from the board and from elected officials over the last few years, myself included when I was a recorder, to try to balance some of the issues that our employees had in terms of things that had been carried over since the previous budgetary problems and things like that. So I think we're moving in the right direction, and I think that looks really good. I'm hopeful that there are county employees that are watching this and feeling at least a little bit lifted in ways that maybe they haven't before. In terms of, I know we're not really getting specific on this. I will say that the jury pay increase, I was very adamant about that when we had the discussion initially. I realize we're never going to get to a point that's going to make a substantive impact on somebody, or that's going to replace their potential lost wages, but it can be less of a slap in the face when we are asking people to give their time like this. So I will continue to be a strong supporter of that, and I believe that's all anybody needs to hear from me.
I want to definitely echo Beth's comment. Just the fact that we have so many requests, I think that a lot of the requests could be solved with a good grant writer. I do feel that it should be a full-time position instead of a part-time position. The grant writer should be trying to search for money for all departments. I will also be a strong advocate for our inmates. I think communicating with the outside is very important to their mental health. Also want to keep in mind that we are housing some out-of-county inmates, and we are expecting, hopefully, that cost will come down, and that would hopefully be a plus to our budget. The jury pay increase, I'd like to echo my seatmate. Definitely, at least be able to pay for gas and lunch. Come on now, gas is very high, and also food costs. So I do definitely think that the jury pay should increase. So that's my little 2 cents. Thank you.
All right, got to be at the end. Just want to thank Mr. Goss for reigniting the trauma that was 2017, 2018, and 2019. I've been saying for a while, like, the people who joined the board in the 2020 cycle, the 22 cycle, or since then, have been living in this, like, wonderland of money where, we just get all these requests, and it's like, why not? But yeah, things are definitely going to change. I think that it's important that we get out of that mindset of generosity to the department heads, and I think in a big way, looking at this list of requests is telling a lot of people no. I do believe, I agree with most people, retention is important. I don't know if that's something, if we're talking about increasing wages. I don't know if that's something we can do by cutting corners on the annual budget. To just be realistic, I think we're definitely going to need a lot more revenue to achieve something like that. And while I do think there's a lot of, every one of these requests has its merit. I think every department that we have does important work. I also do think that there are a handful of departments that do. Again, I don't want to weigh them more than others, but there's some departments that do, I think, gravely crucial work, particularly that in the justice system. And I think that 2 positions I would really advocate for are the social worker in the public defender's office. I think that's something that could have a huge impact. you know, following the philosophy of the community violence prevention programs we did fund, you know, it's based on the idea of making opportunities and resources more available to people. And I don't think there's a more direct way that you can do something like that than having a social worker in the public defender's office. And then also the victim witness advocate, I think that that's a extremely important role. The state attorney mentioned with the Pretrial Fairness Act that there's going to be a lot more work put into contacting victims to notify them when it comes to looking at whether to release somebody or keep them on pretrial detention. So I think that we don't want people, you know, rushing through calls as they're contacting victims. And I think that's just one small aspect of why that position is important. And then also the jury pay. I think Eric said 68, but I think it was like 63 that we said it. So that's just, I mean, that's just not reasonable. I think everybody would agree $10 a day is not the type of income we're used to in America. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I think that we do, you know, we need to stay sober when we're looking at, you know, what things we want to do, and we need to, you know, live with, sort of start accepting the reality that we're not going to be able to do a lot of cool new things the way we've been able to the past 2 years.
I greatly appreciate the conversation. So if you recall, if you did have something you passionately wanted to advocate for, you will have that opportunity at the full board meeting. I will not make us go in a circle, but anybody who at the full board meeting wants to say, I believe, you know, I said what I said, but I don't think we could get beyond, we need to do this. That'll be your chance to say that. And then I think between those two conversations, I feel like that's going to put us in a good stead to have that budget conversation in September. After one of the budget meetings, I can't remember which it was, I got accosted, not really, by about 5 new board members who were like, so how do we get new revenue? And I was like, oh, you know what? That's actually a useful conversation. We have a lot of new board members. We have a history of some really failed attempts of getting new revenue. And I'll just be blunt. This is a conversation that we've been having in Finance Agenda, I don't know, for at least a year, a couple of years. I think anytime that you look at new revenue, it has to be something you do very soberly. It should always be something you do, just to be blunt, as a last resort. I will say, as finance chair, I kind of feel like we're close to there. Even what folks are saying about like looking at retention. What is it going to take to retain our employees? We're $700,000 over budget right now without addressing that issue, right? So we could come up with whatever solution we want, whether it's be improved benefits, and I also feel like at some point it's an exercise. I do agree with Mr. Goss. We've been able to say yes a lot now, but we continue to ask elected officials and department heads, tell us what you need. And to be blunt, I think the answer for 2024 is no. Are we going to continue to ask them to tell us what they need and continue to? I feel like at some point, this board, we need to make a decision. Either we want to think about how we bring in revenue seriously or not, and then say to everybody, this is the world we live in, or this is the world we want to live in, and we need to make that decision. I don't think any of that impacts 2024. 2024 is what 2024 is, right? But looking forward in the future, do we as a body, and I don't at all think we need to make this decision right now, but I wanted to start a conversation, look at trying to change that future a little bit. And so I asked the admin office to give us a brief presentation. I'd like to get us out of here as close to 8:30 as possible. A brief presentation on what are the options we have, because I know a lot of people don't even know what the options are that we have, with some history. And so, yeah, you know, this is a conversation we started with Tammy, but she's no longer here, so Michelle's taken it up. I thought about waiting for this, but I was like, at some point we have to, and I'll just be honest, I kind of wanted to start the conversation with Mr. Goss here because he and I have been, I don't know, having this conversation for years now at this point.
So before I jump into that, I just have a couple quick things based on the conversations you all just had. So I did want to just be completely transparent. After we deal with the compression issue, the next thing that I'm going to be bugging you about is the health insurance, because we will be looking at double-digit increases every year for here on out if we do not get more families and spouses into our health insurance plan. So that's just a fact. So that is definitely like high on my priority list of the next thing that we need to look at. So I'll definitely be connecting with Board Member Rodriguez, and we'll be looking at how we could possibly do that. I've already kind of mentioned it to John, and he's brought up how some other counties are doing it. So we're in the kind of data collecting process right now. So the Public Defender's Office, it looks like they are going to be getting about a $110,000 grant from the AOIC, the office that runs the Supreme Court, or however that works. So I think there's a little bit of kind of relief on us. Something, maybe we could consider would be, paying for fringes on some staffing if they pay the salaries, trying to like share the costs a little bit as opposed to us either having to pick all of it up or not being able to do any of it. And the other thing I just wanted to say, so I know we talk a lot about the Safety Act and what it's going to do, what it's going to cost, what it's going to create. And that's all really an unknown at this point. We don't know. So I would just suggest, from a financial perspective, that with a very open mind that things may change, we take a wait and see approach. And let's wait and see what kind of work it creates, what kind of issues it creates, and be prepared to be responsive when the department heads come to us and can say, here's what we're seeing, here's what it's causing. But putting a bunch of money into a problem that we don't even know is a problem, and we don't even know what it's going to look like, we can't even get our arms around it, like we have no idea, just doesn't seem like a really good fiscal decision with all the other things that we have going on. Okay, so we need more money, seems to be the consistent theme. So how can we do that? We can do that in a couple different ways. We can raise the property tax, which I know I'm going to start off with the most popular one. Because we're under PTEL, Property Tax Extension Limitation Law, we wouldn't actually be saying we're raising your property taxes. We would be putting forth a referendum on the ballot to be approved by the voters that would ask to increase the limiting rate. It's a very confusing question. It has a lot of text. It has a very specific equation in it that tells them, based on every $100 value of their home, how much more money they would be paying. So it's a scary question to put on the ballot. In 2017, we tried to do it for the nursing home, and it failed. And when I happened to be looking at those election results, I noticed that there were actually 5 tax rate increase questions on that ballot, and all but one of them failed. So that's an option. We can raise our limiting rate, which would essentially be raising the property tax rate. Or we can just jump the gun and we can repeal PTEL. That's an option too. Again, a referendum initiated by a resolution from the board, put on the ballot, approved by the voters. It would essentially say we no longer want to be a PTEL county. This map, we're that gold square there, obviously on the east central side. None of the counties around us are PTEL. The pink counties are counties that were PTEL or defeated PTEL, one or the other. I think they voted down PTEL. So I think one of the things to keep in mind, just in reference when we always hear like, oh, well, McLean County's doing this, and Piatt County's doing this, and Vermilion County's doing this, they're not PTEL, so they have more leeway than we do. So in fairness to us and our constraints, keep that in mind. And yeah, as Tammy had mentioned in her budget forecast, just in this year alone, PTEL has cost us $500,000 in limiting the tax rate that we can levy. So that's option 2, repeal PTEL. Option 3 is the Veterans Assistance Levy, which is the new legislation. Again, it would be a referendum from the board, put on the ballot, approved by the voters. It says that we could levy a separate independent tax up to 0.03% of our EAV, our assessed tax value, which, for us, we've talked about is a significant amount of money. This would be a separate tax in a separate fund that would only be for the VAC. They would control it, they would utilize it. We would not be appropriating anything out of this. The only use for this money would be to the Veterans Assistance Commission. So in terms of our big picture, keep that very specific scope in mind as to how that tax would work. And in true legislative fashion, the legislation that put this in place does not address what happens if we put it on the ballot and the voters vote it down, and then the VAC asks for a bunch of money that we don't really have. So there's that too. Facility sales tax. So probably like the least sexy tax that we have, a sales tax to support our buildings. Again, referendum from the board, put on the ballot, approved by the voters. We don't currently utilize this tax in the county. It's quarter cent at a time. And the last time that we tried to do it in 2016, it got really conflated as to whether or not it was paying for a nursing home or the jail. It was a pretty contentious kind of conversation, and it failed. Increase the public safety sales tax. So we have the public safety sales tax. It's a quarter cent for every dollar spent in Champaign County. It was initially approved in 1998. It has not been raised since it was first approved. It does not apply to groceries, large personal property, medications, prescriptions, non-prescription medical appliances. So it has some exemptions from that. And because of those, particularly those large personal property exemptions, it does not grow as quickly as our standard sales tax because it's got like those big ticket items are carved out of it. And actually, I'm going to talk a little bit more about this one because it is the one that I know the most about. And I think it's probably our most viable option. If you're really interested in the other options, let me know and I can go do some additional research and bring that information back to you. But this one I just know more about. So in 2022, it gave us about 6.4 million, 23 about 6.6. So as you can see, again, that growth, it grows, but it just does not grow, very, very quickly. Also in 2017, I know you've heard Tammy talk about it, the state imposed a collection fee, and since then we've lost about $500,000 because of that collection fee from the state. So it's also cutting into the growth that we have from that one. So we have to maintain a very high fund balance for this one. And I don't know if you maybe noticed that in the budget, because we use the public safety sales tax for debt service, and we basically have to have upfront the entire cost of our debt service in the fund at the beginning of the year. So when you look at the fund, you might be like, what are you talking about? We have a ton of money. We do not have a ton of money. Like the fund basically has to stay above 3 million all the time throughout the year as we cycle through our money. So until we have, paid off all our bonds, which isn't really ever going to happen, we have to maintain that higher fund. For our current uses for the public safety sales tax, almost half of it does go to that debt service. So the construction on the courthouse, JDC, and the jail consolidation project that's happening right now is the half of what the public safety sales tax brings in. It also pays for a solid portion of JANO, which is a pretty expensive system all around. JANO is paid from many funds because it is so expensive. We do the $100,000 to Rosecrans every year for the reentry program. We pay for the one lieutenant that does the jail classification in the jail system, the annual fees for the debt service, utilities and maintenance costs for the buildings that fall under the public safety inclusion. It's currently paying for all of the out-of-county housing of the inmates that we have, and we also make a contribution from it to the CARF for technology needs related to the criminal justice. So again, it can only contribute to CARF for the public safety entities, not all departments, but just the public safety ones. And then, of course, we have the 5%, which is for juvenile delinquency prevention, which is funding the Youth Advocacy Center, and then we have a grant program executed by Mental Health that covers the rest of that funding. So that is the current use of the public safety sales tax. So what that means, this is what it would look like if we increased it. In terms of increasing the public safety sales tax, because it does have parameters on what we can spend it on, it just gives us the opportunity to shift things off of the general fund and onto the public safety sales tax. So there's really no restriction like the veterans assistance tax that we would really be too concerned about. And then I just wanted to end by bringing back Tammy's financial forecast that she did months ago. With the update, originally she had projected $113,000 deficit for 24. And as we have said multiple times already, we're now looking at about $700,000. I don't expect significant changes in that number at this point. I think we've got most of our major expenses in there. But that's a big difference from 113 to 700. But the reason I really wanted to bring this up is because of all those scary red numbers in the general fund starting in fiscal year 26. And they just keep growing. And that's why we need to have this conversation, and we need to make a decision now of either we're going to do something for more revenue or we're going to start no on everything. Everything's going to be no, because by the time we end fiscal year 26, we're going to be $1 million in deficit already. And we know that that's not even including costs that we know are going to continue to increase. That's not including the new software licensing that we have to pay for from all the ARPA projects that we have implemented in the county. Like there's costs that still need to be built into those numbers. So, not to ruin your night, but again, the $700,000 number is important. But I think what's really important is that we can see what's coming in 2 years. And I don't want to be around in 2 years and have to talk about how the board didn't really want to do anything. And I don't want any of you to be on the board with me when we have to have that conversation, when we know right now we could do something about this. And that could be 2 different roads, but we need to pick one and then commit to it, I think.
Thank you. You actually did that in like 13 minutes. I appreciate that because, like I said, a lot of people don't have that history, and it's a kind of dark history. I don't expect anybody to jump out of their seat and be like, egads, I think we should do this based on that conversation. I wanted to start it as a conversation. Does anybody have anything they want to say initially? My plan is just to keep this on the agenda as a conversation point. If we are going to do something, all of them require referendum. So we as a body could want, as hard as we want, any of these. And I will say this, so if we do decide to go after something, we need to collectively decide on something that we think could pass. And if we do decide to do something, I know that nothing on this board is ever unanimous or anything like that, but I think one of the things that really hurt some of the past referendums is the board itself was very split about them, was publicly split about them. And if we aren't pulling in one direction and advocating for something, there's 0% chance it'll pass. But I do think we're at an inflection point. And we as a body either have to decide to go after new revenue or not, and then structure our budgeting process in response to that decision. We cannot continue to have $3 million and like this can't just happen every year, right? It's not fair to anybody in the county. It's not, and we can talk as much as we want that we value our employees and we want to invest in our employees. My next question to everybody who said that is, with what money, right? Where are you making that investment? And so I wanted just to start this conversation, and we can continue it at future meetings. But did anybody, Mr. Thorsland?
Egads, I have an idea. And it doesn't require a referendum. And a lot of people have said it around this room tonight. Why are we doing a part-time grant writer? Let's just get a grant writer. They will pay for themselves. There is money out there. There's low-hanging fruit. It can pay for all kinds of hard part things, so we can concentrate more on the people, which everyone in this room said they want to concentrate on. Get a grant writer. 2, I think PTEL is a leftover Grover Norquist kind of evil construct where taxes are bad and they give you nothing. And then the first time the snowplow doesn't go down their street, they go, I pay my damn taxes, where's the plow? So, well, because we only have 3 and we wanted to have 4, but you voted down the tax to buy another one. So get rid of PTEL if we could, and get a grant writer full-time and pay them well, because they're going to pay for themselves, period.
In response to that, I'll say 2 things. I am no fan of PTEL. I do think rescinding it would be a heavy lift because nobody understands what it is. And so I feel like that is going to be if that's the route we want to look at, we'd have to have a lot of conversation about that route. I'll just be honest, like one of the reasons I kind of veer towards to be transparent, public safety sales taxes, say the word public safety, it's something that people could wrap their hands around, right? And also, if you look at our budget, the part of our budget that is upside down is our public safety side. If we could get that right, I think it rights the whole ship. In terms of the grant writer, it blows my mind that this county doesn't. The 2 things when I first got here, I was like, so you don't have a HR person, you don't have a grant writer, and you're a government? Okay, right? I completely agree that we should fund a full-time grant writer. However, having lived in this world, I want us to be cautious to think that grant writing will solve systemic personnel shortfalls. Grant writing is fantastic for new initiatives and specialized initiatives, but it is very hard to get just pure operational grants and personnel grants, even if you're a not-for-profit. It borderline doesn't exist if you're a government. I used to do this for a government. So you could definitely take some burden off of, you know what I mean? Like, could we fund the sheriff's social worker right now that's on the general fund through grants? Yeah, probably. That, you know what I mean? Are we going to fund 4 new deputies, or Stan Harper's 2 that we have left to get? The chances of that are negligible, right? And I really do think, like, particularly with the deputies and how expensive they are, it's like these are the deputies we have, or we bring in new revenue. Like, there is no. In particular, Dustin's request, like, he has $1 million of salary requests. There is no landscape where we have that recurring money. And I do think grants could alleviate some of it, but I'd be hesitant to say that it could alleviate. But that said, I still think a full-time grant writer would be banging. Ellie, and then Jenny.
I have a lot of questions that I'll save for another time, but can we get a copy of this PowerPoint? It was very helpful. Thank you.
Yes, I will ask the lovely Megan to email it to everybody.
Yes, that. Also commend the use of the word banging. But EGAD, the Veterans Assistance Commission tax levy, was that what that one was? Could you go back to that? I feel like that's another one that really should be a slam dunk in this county. I don't know anybody who does not support our veterans, whether they support, them to the tune of 0.03 of the assessed value on taxable property, I guess would remain to be seen. But I just feel like that's something that would, if it passes, I hope it would pass, kind of take some of the pressure off of the upcoming need to fund these projects.
So I just want to clarify, we could levy up to. We don't have to levy the entire amount. And I think that underneath that is the more strategic conversation of how many tax increases do you want to put on the ballot?
Right.
And how soon do you want to put them on the ballot after each other?
Right.
And this is the most restricted one.
Right. I will say, and I've had this conversation just at great length with Tammy, given our budget landscape, if we went after public safety sales tax, we could alleviate enough pressure on the general fund to, if the VAC came to us and said, I want the full bore of what the state says I could ask, we would be able to accommodate that. In part because the state in their infinite wisdom only lets us do it at quarter-cent increments. I think one of the things that's tough is I think we could get by with an eighth, but they don't let us do that. The plus side of it is we would be able to do the VAC if we went after public safety sales tax because we'd be able to move enough things off the general fund. I do agree if we're going to go after any tax, it should only be one. We can't have two tax increases on the ballot. So I think we get one bite at the apple. We have to think strategically, is that a bite we even want to take, or do we want to just leave the apple the way it is? Yes.
I guess I have another question on an unrelated slide. Can I see the map of the P-TEL again? Yeah. Okay, because that's something that I don't fully understand how it works. I know a lot of, most of the county, you said, doesn't really fully understand how it works. If anybody has any details on those pink counties and how they went about repealing P-TEL, I would love to learn more about it. I'll start doing some research on my own to see what I can find. But if anybody has specific examples, I see
think
Steve's
that
hand
they
up.
more rejected it than repealed it.
Okay.
Because in order to start it is a voter. And Steve Summers knows more about P-TEL than anybody. And he likes to have beers with you and talk about it.
I don't know that
Well,
I'd go,
if there's
that I'd
beer,
go that
yeah.
far, but you're absolutely correct. I don't believe that they passed it and then rescinded it.
So nobody's done that.
I
That
don't
we
know
know
that
of.
no one has done that, but I know particularly in the case of McLean County, there were people in McLean County that proposed P-TEL probably the following year after Champaign County did, and they rejected it.
And I just want to point out that the reason that Cook and the Collar counties are in a different color is because they did P-TEL for 1 year each and then never did it again. So I think that when we talk about reject, that was their way around rejecting it because they did it for 1 year, saw what was going to happen, and stopped.
Ms. Michaels and then Mr. Farney.
I think real obviously here, we're looking at taxes all the way around the block, because that's kind of where most of the bigger bang would come from. I'm probably more in favor, just real quickly here, of something that would touch everybody globally versus just the homeowners.
Yes.
I guess my comment would be on the VAC. And one of the reasons that I would prefer the public safety sales tax, and as you said, taking the pressure off the general fund, is that the VAC ultimately is not controlled by a board that's elected by the voters. They don't report to anyone, whereas we have to report to the voters. We have to be stewards of the taxpayer dollar. And so I think it's a much more transparent way of doing things. And so I would much more be in favor of us going after the public safety sales tax.
Any other? We don't have to decide this tonight. I just wanted to have a starting conversation because, again, this is the kind of thing that Jim Goss and I talk about, on a weekly basis, monthly basis. But I know for some people, it's the first time maybe you've heard the word P-TEL, right? So I will say, if anybody wants to grab a coffee or a tea or a beer or whatever the heck it is you drink and talk about this at more length, I would be glad to do so. I'd be glad to go out and talk about this more with you, if that would be at all helpful. Mr. Goss?
Yeah, just a couple of quick comments. I think public safety is obviously a buzzword. I think you're going to know a lot over the next 6 months what safety does, and you will have a better sell, because I don't know that it changes our population and our jails a ton, but I also know that's going to come with some increased cost because of no cash bail and some other things that we just don't, quite honestly, as Michelle said, we don't have any concept of what it's going to cost us. All we know is it's going to cost us something. The other thing is just a true-to-life P-TEL. I was a supporter of P-TEL, probably still am for a couple of reasons, but I'm in a county that is non-P-TEL on that map in Mercer County, and the taxes on one 800-acre parcel have gone up 2,000%. 8% in the last 4 years. Now, it was really low, but what the other side of it is my drainage tax over there is $30 an acre, and so my real estate taxes were 2 or 3. Now my drainage tax remains at $30 an acre, and I'm surrounded by the Mississippi River on one side and a bay on the other side. Now my real estate taxes are approaching $30 an acre, and I've got a farm that we just, in 2019, we put $47,000 in levies because we thought the Mississippi was going to come over on us. So PTEL would have stopped that egregious increase. Now, it would have gotten there. Some of it was due to the state's recalculation of some stuff too, but that's why people supported PTEL. They supported it in this county because, again, our EAV goes up. We're a county. You didn't see it happen in Pike County because their stuff doesn't move. Douglas County, their stuff doesn't move. You know, we were seeing double-digit increases in valuations, and, you know, you were getting huge tax money that was going out. So anyway, I've said my piece, but I think you've got to work on PSST because I think you can all get behind it. We can all get behind it and sell it. And I think it's more fair. So thanks.
Ellie.
I think this is probably a question for Michelle. What is the timeline on getting a ballot referendum or a referendum on the ballot?
It depends on which election we want to do. If we want to do it for the primary, which I would not recommend, we would need to have it probably done in November, December to get to the clerk's office on time. If we want to do it in the general of 24, which I think is our best bet to do it, we would need to have it to the clerk's office by probably August. And again, it's like a one meeting thing, you know, do it at COW, do it at the county board, it's a referendum, or it's a resolution, you've passed it.
All right. That's probably enough for one night. Take some time to digest it. We'll revisit this conversation. And like I said, the offer stands. If you'd like to, you know, grab a drink and talk about this more in depth, I'd be glad to do so.
And if you come up with very specific questions, like math questions, like please email them to me ahead of time, because I gotta like go read all of Tammy's stuff first to figure out how it works. Like don't spring that on me at a board meeting. I'm not gonna have that answer.
And
So.
I also will say, you know, we focus a little bit on public safety sales tax because we've thought about it a lot, and also it's a tax that we currently have, so we know how it operates. If anybody wants us to do more research, if you're like, I want to learn more about this, just let us know. We could bring that to you, okay? All right, so anyway, I'm done with my section. I realize the board isn't done. I'm done with, what do I have left?
Closed minutes.
Oh, I don't have this sentence to say, so.
I would move to follow the state's attorney's recommendation to open the minutes of the August 13th, 2013, and for all of the closed session minutes to remain closed.
All right. Moved by Thorsland, second by Esri. Any discussion? Can't have any unless you want to go into closed session. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Nay. So on I have no chair's report on the budget it's A1 and A3, D1, no, not, A2 is not on, it was postponed. A1 and A3, D1, E1 and 2, and F1. Oh, yeah, sorry, not D1. Oh, you're right. We had a no. Yeah, there was a hands. There was a split vote. Sorry. So A1, A3, E1, and E2. Oh, and F1. I don't know if that, do those go on the consent? No.
All right, next we have Justice and Social Services. Leah?
Thank you. Let's do this very quickly, people. Monthly reports have been updated and placed on file on each department's webpage. Probation and court services for July 2023. Public Defender for August of 2023, EMA for August of 2023. Item B, we have the Rosecrans Reentry Financial Report for July of 2023. And then we have some other business, Mr. Thorsland.
I move to follow the state's attorney's recommendation for all closed session minutes to remain closed. If there's any discussion we have to go in closed session, please say no.
Can I get a second? Michaels, thank you. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Sorry, I don't know why my finger's on that button. No chair's report, except it's very late and I'm tired now, and I have nothing to put on the consent agenda. Thank you very much. Back to you, Kyle.
Seeing no other business, we are adjourned.